familiar with the words, Hoy, hindi ko pinupulot ang pera ha? Meaning, basically, money's not everywhere. How about this one? Money don't grow on trees. How about this one? Puro gastos na lang ang alam mo. All while asking mom for an extra dollar. Are there cultural meanings that's keeping you from your riches? And when I say riches, it could be money, but it could be simply abundance, freedom, the power to show up as you.
Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak and love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Rowan, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino-American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kaping barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with American culture, talks about trauma-informed care and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is your host, Rowan. Today, we're going to be talking about Filipino money mindset blocks that's keeping you from your riches. Now, when you think about it, money, which is this paper or it could be a coin, the barya. When we were babies, when we were young kids, we don't really have meanings yet placed or attached to these objects. We learn this from our parents. We also learn this from our culture. And so in today's episode, we'll dive into perhaps cultural influences that's you placed on the value of money that's standing in your way for an abundant life, for riches, for freedom, and simply for showing up, being you. When I was growing up, my parents were both entrepreneurs, and in fact, my mom is a mix of Irish and Chinese Filipino. And so when she married my dad, who is this poor guy from a province called Marinduque, shout out if anyone knows or familiar with this province. Now, she was actually disowned by my Chinese grandpa for marrying someone out of that social economic class. Usually, especially for women, it's expected that you marry someone at least at your same level or someone who is in a higher socioeconomic status. So, this brings me to the point of talking about what they call the Great Divide. Obviously, across culture, this exists, but especially in the Philippines, when there is actually a socioeconomic class and it's from A to E, E being the poorest of the poor, what we call people who might be living in quote and unquote squatters area, lands that they don't own, they basically just stake their homes there so they have a roof on top of their heads. And then the A, people who fall under A are like people who have multiple homes in the most exclusive villages in the Philippines. And so this great divide is meant to explain that there are so many people in between that socioeconomic status, usually the C and the D. In the Philippines, we call that the masa, okay, the masses. And then there's only a few percentage of people on the top, the A. And this great divide creates a whole subculture within our culture. Imagine there's 26 million people in poverty in the Philippines. And what you would notice, growing up, or if you visit the islands, is everyone wants to be an entrepreneur in the Philippines. You'll see these karatula, this wooden signage, and it starts when someone's young. I used to do this. My mom taught me to learn how to sell at a young age. I would sell ice candy. Are you guys familiar with this? It's this plastic, very narrow plastic. You'll pour juice there. It could be buko juice. It could be orange. And you basically sell it in front of your home. So you just put the karatula, the symbol that ice candy is being sold in your home. But especially in the poorer sections in the Philippines, or specifically in Manila, you'll see a lot of karatula. People are really trying to make ends meet. And, due to economic reasons, many Filipinos back home have to tap in what we call in the West creative entrepreneurs. But the luxury of tapping into your creative left brain, as they say, is really not a luxury for many Filipinos. There's a need to survive, to feed your family, to send your kids to school. That's the motivation that shakes up people's brain for creativity, because there is this movement to have children finish school. But quite frankly, there are not enough employment opportunities for Filipinos back home. And so people have to be creative to survive. So let's begin. What cultural influences help shape the meanings we placed on this piece of paper, money? Let's begin. Filipinos love to watch soap operas. Have you watched one? And what's your favorite? In a lot of this soap opera or slash teleserye, there is usually the rich, who's the villain, and the poor. And it's very engaging if you haven't watched a teleserye. And in a culture when speaking up might not always have the most favorable response, when you watch a teleserie, it's almost like watching your own personal psychodrama unfold before your very eyes. It could be very cathartic for many Filipinos. The difference is it's safe, because even though it feels like it's your story, no one else knows. You just feel like, wow, that's me. That's my experience. Best of all, it may have the outcome you thought your story may never have, but an outcome nevertheless you can continue to dream about. We know that, our imagination creates opportunities. And for many of our Filipino kababayans, especially the poor, there's a ceiling, if you will, as far as like reaching the heights of their career. There's not a lot of opportunities. But when watching this teleserie, it brings life to even dreams that they know might not be possible, but it keeps it alive. Now, how this influenced the way we see money is usually the rich are the villains. And when you think about villains, they're usually the ones that are stepping on the poor, the one that is the maldita and the oppressor. And it's a rare find to find stories where the poor is depicted as the one that's the aggravator, and the rich, the one who has a humble heart. So it gives us a message. As you know, teleserye, we watch it over and over and over again. Wait for the next episode. The poor is kind, and being rich, it means being the oppressor, being wicked. And I know that many Filipinos are Christians and Catholic. There's even a saying, right, that it's harder for a rich man to enter the heaven's door. Did I get that right? You can correct me by commenting. So that's the first one, is that it's in a platform that's easily consumable by the masses. And usually teleseries are consumed by like I said, just the regular Filipino back home. And patterns of listening and seeing the same storyline does influence the way we see money and the meanings we place on it. So that's the first one. The second one is this togetherness. Walang iwanan. Sama-sama, right? Like as we say in our culture. So close friends or circle of friends, it's called Barkada. And we have always this bond of experiences that we share with a sibling, with a group of friends. If you belong to a church, that becomes your group. Barkadahood in the Philippines is really the extension of family. I remember growing up, many of my friends would joke around, nakakasira talaga ang pag-aaral sa barkada. Which means school can ruin the barkada. Of course, we're joking around. When daily responsibilities get in the way of barkada gigs. In the Filipino culture, although individualistic goals are encouraged, like finishing school, loyalty to the unit of the family or social circles are expected. This happens because there's a lot of threat collectively as far as things that are not consistent. So, could be natural disasters, it could be corruption, history of colonization, and many, many other threats around us. And studies show us that when there are more threats, people tend to be more cohesive. They want to kind of like huddle together. We also see this in animals, especially with monkeys and apes, right? If they are in an environment where it's really super cold, super, like they need each other for survival, there is a closer bond for that tribe of monkeys. Now, depending on the socioeconomic status of the Filipino family, the mantra of all for one for all is contingent upon the level of economic need the family member belongs to. The poorer the family is, the more bonded they are with this mantra. And you'll see poor families, right? They'll maybe put all their resources in, let's say, an ate. So she can finish school and ate can help out the rest of the family because there's not a lot of resources to go around. Although this makes sense, this sort of psychological imprinting of always staying with the pack, being loyal, could, impact us by not wanting to stand out, always looking behind us and seeing who we left behind. And that's not, a negative attribute. In fact, it's positive in many ways. But when someone is pacing, let's say if you just imagine walking around and you're holding hands and then suddenly you are a few steps forward and others are behind because you are maybe making more money or you are doing your own thing. There's a word in our culture, mayabang, which is someone who is mayabang is that's frowned upon. That means being arrogant. That's one that you avoid at all costs. This usually means you have left the pack for your own individual advancement, leaving others behind. So this togetherness, walang iwanan, it's very positive in many ways, but how this blocks our mindset that's keeping you from your riches is because you feel someone who's moving forward feels like they have to wait and that the success of one truly is defined by the success of everybody. So, like I said, that's not a negative thing. But one way to redefine that is if you are, let's say, everyone's in a hole and you're now on top, when you're way ahead of the rest, you could actually drop this rope so that you can now start help others to climb up that rope rather than the feeling or this meaning that you've left others behind. But that can create really this mindset block. So the next one is
The Pinoy money mindset block because It almost feels that if we are pursuing, carving, finding our own story, doing a lot more, that we are not content or we are not grateful for those who have done things for us, for our parents, our ancestors.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Coming up next, is it true? More money, more problem. Just a quick commercial break. Diyan ka lang. I want to know what topics interest you about Filipino relationship, immigration, mental health, at iba pa. Send me a message at info@calamansijuice.com with the subject title podcast topic. And as always, the email will be in the show notes. I'll see you there. Let's continue. Is it true? More money, more problems? You often hear in the islands, people say, simple lang ang buhay. Simple lang. Life is just easy. And money makes it more complicated. I grew up hearing people say that, thank goodness I'm just a sales clerk and I don't have to worry about big things like the bosses do. You see, both of my parents came from humble beginnings and they were both successful entrepreneurs. Many summers as a child growing up in the Philippines, I worked as a cashier as my summer job. My parents owned just a simple, like a drugstore. And I remember I would enter like just regular employee. I would have my punch card with the login and a log out time so that my parents would know how much to pay me. And what's important about this summer job was I become privy to the people that work for my parents, right? Their stories, their humor, the kwentuhan, because I'm there day in and day out during the summer season. I hear them say a lot of things like, buti na lang, I'm not the boss, let the boss worry about that. Or buti na lang, a good thing, I won't have a headache, let the boss worry about that. In believing that more money equals more problems and that life could be simpler without it, why worry about it? So this could be an influence on our money mindset blocks, thinking that life would be simpler if we don't involve ourselves in bigger things, whether it's career, abundance, freedom. And like I said in the very beginning, it's not all about money, it's really more about freedom and having to shape and design the life that you intend for you and your family. So, more money, more problems. That's the money mindset block. The next one, and I think this is our last one. Oh, there's another one is pasalamat ka nga. Basically, you should be thankful. So the case of being content. Now, that too is something positive also in our Filipino culture. But as you travel, Rojas Boulevard, which is one of the main roads in Manila, you'll find many reasons for you to be grateful about. If you get stopped by the traffic light, you'll see, impoverished kids, begging for alms or providing a quick DIY service of, just washing your windshield just to exchange for some coins. If you go under the bridges, you might be taken aback that 3 or 4 year olds are still being breastfed by their moms, not just for the mere love of nursing, but as a method to provide nourishment when money is not within reach. Middle class to affluent families use these powerful images to teach their children to be grateful. Right? When we don't eat our food, even in America, we'd say to our children, oh, be grateful. Kids in the Philippines, not all of them have food to eat. Our religious upbringing reminds us also that everything has a reason and that what we currently have is good enough. To ask for more and therefore seek for more may be seen as greedy. The mindset of abundance unapologetically seeks to find purpose on individual level, whether it hopes to serve the collective, usually in the Philippine culture, the family, This is a personal vision, and it may feel that finding your own space to carve is leaving others behind. And this is really a Pinoy mindset block that may be holding you back. This is a Pinoy abundance or money mindset block as well, because it sorts of put us in a container, right? Okay, if you're really grateful, just stay here. And that moving too much beyond the line seems to be that you are not happy, you don't have enough, and you are not grateful for those who have paved the way for you, for your parents, for your ancestors. So this could be really a block, as you can imagine, if you are really imbibing this message in you. Sometimes people might have an imposter syndrome, right? How dare me, be this way, or how dare me shine a light so bright? How dare me to be so different? So I'm curious if that speaks to you. Have you had that experience of being an imposter, even though you know that you have so much experience and you are competent in what you do? Now, by the way, if you're liking the content of this podcast, don't forget to check out the show notes link for the masterclass I just shared, Pakiramdam, Filipinos on Affection Beyond Words. Now, we're going to go to our final one, the cause of sibling rivalry. Now, many Filipino parents resort to the same parenting practices they used to hate because it's the same practice used on them as a child. Of course, this is not a formula, but if you're running on autopilot parenting and are not self aware how this can influence your parenting, that's probably what's happening is you're just doing the same cycle, the same pattern. Of course, this cycle can be broken. And one of the ways that favorable behaviors are encouraged is the use of comparing, right? Buti pa si ate mo. Look at your sister. So and so is doing better in their work. Now, in the islands, I've observed parents use these types of statements as motivation, for better grades, and obviously, it might motivate kids temporarily, but I'm curious at what cost, right? Like at what cost as far as their self-esteem, or what we say in our language, kumpiyansa sa sarili. Now, sibling rivalry creates a mindset of scarcity, right? It teaches the child that to be counted, because we're always comparing. Look at so and so, that he has to be the best, and that when someone else is nearing the spot of a second placer, energy is focused not on bettering the self but on stopping the second placer in reaching the grand spot. So if you can imagine your track and field, you keep looking behind you, and you're so focused on slowing down the second placer that you're not running the race as in an optimized way. When you study people who have an abundant mindset, entrepreneurs, moms, mind you, of course, that when we say successful or abundant, it's not just about money again, but also equally important are our relationships. I noticed that those who are successful busy themselves for their own space rather than they're consumed with leaving second placer traps to slow down those nearing them. So, if you've been brought up in this environment, of course, it's not too late to change your course. Simply noticing, like this feeling of weird jealousy is a good start, right? And another way, if you need support, you can always seek therapy. So, I hope this has been helpful. These are cultural influences that could possibly be blocking your money mindset so that you're living an abundant life. This has been fun. Thank you for hanging out with me. Again, check out the show notes for all the links. Follow me on Instagram. Check out the masterclass. Again, if you have any questions for this Filipino therapist, you can leave a voicemail or an email at info@calamansijuice.com. Salamat at sa ulitin. Bye!